everyone, welcome back to the very first video of the year. So in 2021, I read a total of 36 books. Woo! And if you are part of my book club, Curl Up Club, then some of these books are going to be very familiar. If you'd like to join my book club this year, I will leave a link in the description box, so please go check it out. So without further ado, let's go over all the books I read last year, starting with fiction. First up, I have It Ends With Us. Now, this was a book that was trending on TikTok, and unfortunately, I don't think it matched the hype. So this is a love story about a girl named Lily. She moves to Boston to chase her dreams to open up a floral shop. And this is where she meets this sexy neurosurgeon named Kyle. It was gripping enough where I finished it, but it's not something that I would read again. Then I read another average book, The Butterfly Garden. So this is about a madman who kidnaps young women and collects them in his greenhouse. It was just so frustrating because there were just so many opportunities for these girls to escape, yet they didn't. And I just found that really annoying. So here we have The Midnight Library. This book was a really fun, fast, and easy read. It will really make you reflect on your own life and all the paths that you could have taken. I think the message of the book is really hopeful, and it just made me feel very warm and fuzzy inside and made me appreciate the life that I live. Since I love thrillers so much, I thought I would pick up And Then There Were None. To be honest, I respect it for what it is. It is truly like the blueprint for thrillers, but I just didn't really connect with it. I mean, it was written in 1939, and I think I just prefer the style of modern writing, but I just didn't feel attached to any of the characters, so when they all died, I just didn't care. Next up, we have The Love Machine. Truthfully, I am a sucker for anything Jacqueline Susan writes. She was just like the best trashy novelist of the 60s, and I just love how she just goes there. And this book definitely goes everywhere, up and down, side to side. It's got drugs, smoking, sex, gay sex, orgies, violence, everything. If you want a wild ride of a book, check this one out. Norwegian Wood. So I decided to reread this coming of age book for my book club. This is set in Japan, also in the 60s, and it follows Toru's time in college. So the last time I read this book, I was 20, so like the same age as Toru in the book, and my experience reading it now as a 30-year-old woman was just completely different. I couldn't help but think about my own son reading this book in his teens, because I think he would like it. So let's move on over to nonfiction. Here we have The Body Keeps the Score. This book is all about trauma and how it stores in our body in different ways we may not notice. This is an extremely long book. It's like a freaking textbook. However, it was very informative on all the types of traumas out there and how it affects your nervous system during and after the event. The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. I love Michael Pollan. He's the man, the GOAT. Any book he writes is extremely thorough. I feel like this book really answered any of my questions about where food comes from and how it's made. It really just shows you the supply chain of food, and it just made me want to make more conscious choices of where I get my food and where it's sourced. I picked up Quiet, The Power of the Introvert, because last year when I was pregnant, I didn't want to see anyone, and I wanted to read a book where my introverted tendencies would be celebrated, and this book did just that. Shortly after, I picked up Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come. This book is about an introvert who forces herself outside her comfort zone by doing extroverted activities like public speaking, talking to strangers, hosting a party, etc., etc. And it just shows you the difference that happens when you do something different every single day. Moving on to memoirs, we have Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is her memoir describing her side of the story when she was sexually assaulted by Brock Turner at the Stanford campus. She shares how dehumanizing and agonizingly slow the judicial system is, and it shows how our current system protects wealthy predators with good lawyers. Honestly, what happened to Chanel could have happened to any young woman at a party, so I feel like every young adult and teen should read this memoir. Zoo Station was one of the most intense and depressing memoirs I've ever read. So in the 70s, Berlin had a very, very bad heroin problem, and so many kids were getting addicted to heroin. So this is about Christiane, who started taking heroin when she was 13, and she ends up prostituting herself to support her addiction, and it reveals how debilitating addiction can be. If you've ever wondered what life was like in North Korea, definitely read In Order to Live. This is about Yeonmi's life there and how she escaped. Like, my jaw was like this the entire time I was reading this. Operating Instructions was one of my favorite books I've read all year. Like, Anne Lamott must be protected at all costs. She is absolutely amazing. This book is a journal of her first year with her son. If you're a new mother, I highly recommend this book. It will make you laugh and feel so connected. Afterwards, I picked up Dusk Night Dawn. This was Anne Lamott's most recent publishing, and unfortunately, this book just fanned the flames to my anxiety. I feel like I read this book at a very wrong time in my life. I read it right after I gave birth. This book is a collection of her musings in the third of her life. So her friends are dying, we're destroying the planet, she focused on the corruption everywhere. It's about like trying to find hope in a hopeless place, but unfortunately, it just highlighted the hopelessness of everything for me. I was desperate for a laugh after I read that, so I reread Dear Girls by Ali Wong, and gosh, this was even more hilarious now that I've become a mom. She describes motherhood with such like wit and unflinching truth. Like, she doesn't sugarcoat anything. I highly recommend everyone read this. It's hilarious. Then I read Crying in H Mart. This is a memoir about dealing with grief after her mom's passing. This was a very sad read. You definitely need the tissues for this book. It made me reflect on my own mom's sacrifices and just the connection that we have. All right, let's touch on soul and self-development. When I found out I was pregnant, I was crippled with fear, so I thought that this book would make sense for me. The title drew me in. This book reminded me that fear should be embraced, not dodged, and to remember that 90% of our worries never happen. I also reread A New Earth. Now, this book is like an instruction manual for your mind. I feel like everyone on the planet needs to read this book. If you're in a creative rut, try reading Big Magic. I gotta warn you that the writing is like a little bit cheesy, but try your best to look past that because there are a lot of great gems in here. This book helped me stop overthinking my work and just to like post and just like let it go, be open to inspiration because creativity comes from a place of curiosity. I picked up Storyworthy because I wanted to become a better storyteller in all aspects of my life. I wanted my stories in real life to just have like more pizzazz and a better kick. And I also thought that this skill could help elevate my YouTube videos. And boy, did it did. I feel like storytelling is a skill that everyone should want to improve on, so definitely read this book. If you want wisdom crammed in a book, read The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Naval is one of the most inspiring people that I think lives today. He's so freaking smart. He's like a modern day philosopher, entrepreneur. I just really like the way he sees the world. Everything in here is just incredibly quotable and each page is very, very powerful. How to Do the Work was a decent read overall. I enjoyed it. I've been on a big self-development kick since 2017, so the concepts in this book weren't new to me. However, this book does give you a lot of techniques on how you can self-heal. Make Time is a very snappy book about productivity and time management. It's just about creating time for the things that you actually want to do and still be happy. I would recommend this book for anyone who struggles to prioritize what's important to them and how to execute that. Last year, I enjoyed Sam Harris's podcast called Waking Up, so I decided to read his book with the same title, and I'm not gonna lie, I had to read this while being extremely alert. Like every time I tried to read this at night, I would just like not understand what I read and just fall asleep. I think this is one of those books where I had to like pick and choose what I agree with and dispose the ideas that I didn't vibe with. I love the chapter about meditation and the benefits behind it all, and the use of psychedelics to find transcendence and healing. Then we have the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. I picked this up because postpartum was extremely rocky for me and I was going through a lot of health anxiety at the time. Like, I genuinely thought that I was going blind. I listened to this as an audiobook and Louise's voice was just so reassuring and loving. Her message is essentially that you can heal your body as long as you love yourself. So now let's get into the bulk of the books, which were all about pregnancy and parenthood. Like, when I found out I was pregnant, I was so anxious that I just wanted to read as much information as possible. So the first one that I picked up was Expecting Better by Emily Oster. I thought that this was a great book for moms to be, especially because she hits like controversial topics without like dancing around the subject. Then I read Like a Mother. This was one of my favorite pregnancy/motherhood reads because it just felt like a really smart friend telling me her transition throughout the whole process with a lot of facts as well. I loved her revelations. They were top notch. On the other hand, we have And Now We Have Everything. This was a memoir that took me a while to finish because it was just like a lot of complaining. There were just moments where I was just like, okay, like I get it, but just like, let's just move on. This would be a good book for someone who is really struggling with their pregnancy because you'd probably be able to relate to her. So as I was getting closer to my due date, I was starting to get more anxious about like giving birth. So mindful birthing came in really clutch. It gave me a lot of peace, a lot of actionable steps on how you can be more mindful and present during your pregnancy and during birth. Then I read What No One Tells You. Clearly I was feeling a lot of emotions during my pregnancy, and I also had a lot of time to myself. So this book was nice to read because it shares the like not so typical emotions that most mothers may share. I feel like this book also prepared me for the 4th trimester. It's a very fragile and unstable time, and this really normalized that for me. Bringing Up Bebe is all about the differences between American parenting versus French parenting. The author is American, but she lives in France, so she just like picked up on all the differences. When I was reading this book, I was like, oh yeah, these are great concepts, but like now that London's here, I don't know how applicable these techniques are gonna be and how realistic they are. So I don't know. I think it's worth a read to see what you want to adopt and what you want to dispose. If you're having a home birth or an unmedicated birth, definitely read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. Personally, I knew I wanted the epidural from the jump, but I just wanted to see what the other side of the argument was if I like chose to go unmedicated. After I read this, I was still set on getting the epidural, but it just removed any fear about giving birth because it just explained how natural the process is. I read Crib Sheet the last week of my pregnancy because I thought I should probably read a book about actually raising a baby. This book is a really good starting ground on all the decisions you're gonna have to make as a parent, from sleep schedules, feeds, breastfeeding, vaccines, and more. It weighs the pros and cons of it all. Precious Little Sleep was a book gifted to me by one of my mama friends because did you know that you actually have to like teach your baby how to sleep? I know, what a concept. But yeah, this book gave me all the tips and tools on how to train your baby to sleep, how to get them to nap better. So the final parenting book I finished was Parenting from the Inside Out. This was recommended by my therapist and I absolutely loved it. It's about understanding your own childhood and the core memories you've made in order to become the best parent possible. Like one of my biggest fears about becoming a parent was passing down trauma and scarring my child. So this book showed me ways that I can prevent that from happening. All right, so that wraps up all the books that I read in 2021. My goal was actually 40 books, so I'm pretty damn proud that I made it to 36. This year, I plan to have no goal. My free time has severely reduced. However, I'm just gonna make it a point to prioritize reading because I am the most happy when I'm like curled up with a good book. All right, so that wraps things up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.